Would it be too bold to say that probably just about everybody out there has some need that they're maybe meeting in maybe not a healthy way? Would
Right.
that be
Oh,
like
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I have yet to meet a person that hasn't.
Welcome to the Carla Rand Show, a weekly podcast designed to dig into the lives of everyday people. People who are making a positive impact, people who have risen above and overcome obstacles. Insights and stories from ordinary individuals who inspire us all towards the truly extraordinary. Here's your host.
Hey, it's Carla, and I just interviewed Leona Peters, and I had reached out to Leona, kind of got referred to her, and she's been such a help to me. She's a counselor, so my first thing was like, oh my goodness, a counselor, do I really need a counselor? All skeptical, all worried, all thinking like, oh, I must be a real mess to have to need a counselor. But she was so gracious and so helpful, and really, I would say probably like one of the most important mentors in my life at this time. She has just helped me over and over again and just always gracious, listens, and just always guides me carefully and one step at a time, reminding me of the lies that I'm believing and reminding me of who I am in Christ. And that's been so important for me right now. So I know you'll love this conversation. We talked a lot about different people's struggles and why they might need a counselor and how it's helpful. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it. I know I did, even just in our conversation, I felt like it was kind of like a counseling session because I've struggled with binge eating and I often go to other things besides where I should be in order to try to deal with stress in my life. So yeah, let's get into the conversation. I think you're really going to get a lot out of this. Leona Peters, welcome to the Carla Rand Show. Nice to have you here.
Well, it's great to be here, Carla. Thanks for having me as your guest.
Thank you. I feel like I know you really good now, like when I hear your voice, because I'm so used to hearing you, like when we do our counseling sessions. It's like really familiar to me. But I just want to introduce Leona a little bit. She is a counselor. Her husband and her, they both do counseling. And she has, yeah, they have a ministry. And it's kind of funny because I'm sitting here talking to you, and most of the time when we have our conversations, I'm walking around, right? Like I'm walking as I'm talking to you. So now you get my undivided attention, and I get your undivided attention. So it's kind of cool. But I'm excited about this because Leona has helped me a lot, just like with my mindset, trying to figure out, okay, like what's going on with me, right? And I've never had a counselor before, so it was a real step for me to actually like go and say,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to get a counselor
Mm-hmm.
here. I need some help.
Mm-hmm.
So that was huge. And I imagine that's probably a lot of people's story. Like our listeners are probably like, yeah, I've never had a counselor. Now, I will say that there is a lot of entrepreneurs that I follow, like a lot of business people, and a lot of them who are very successful, they actually get a counselor like, or a therapist that they work with maybe on a weekly basis because there's so much coming at you. And especially when you have a
Mm-hmm.
business like you're trying to help people all the time, or, you know, you're a mother or really anybody, but when you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to help other people, you really need to make sure that you're okay. So I think for me,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I was helping so many people and I realized, yeah, like I'm okay, but there's actually some things that I need to work on so that I can
Mm-hmm.
better help other people
Mm-hmm.
too. So that's
Right.
kind of was why I reached out to you. And you've been very gracious and sweet and very helpful. So thank you, Leona.
You're welcome.
But let's go back. I want people to get some context with you. So, what was life like for you as a child, Leona? Where did you grow up? What kind of family did you have? Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
I sure will. I grew up in Saskatchewan, in southern Saskatchewan, on a farm. I was the middle child of five, and actually the middle child in the sense that I was the middle daughter too.
Oh,
so, so I had two brothers and three. There were three girls, me being the middle one, and I'd say like we were not upper, like I don't even know if we were middle class, but maybe lower. But I never knew that as a child growing up. I mean, we never were made to feel like we had less or whatever. So it was fun. Of course, growing up on a farm, my siblings were my playmates, like because we were too far to go to neighbors or, when we were little, and yeah, life seemed like pretty normal. Or that's the thing with everyone I work with. Our life seems normal because it's all we know growing
hmm
up, and it's like sometimes people come for help because they have like real trauma or difficulties in their child, or they didn't have a great growing up experience. But even if we had a great growing up experience, we feel things greatly as a child, but we don't know how to interpret them. And sometimes things that happen we interpret them and we believe something out of that. And then we live out of that subconsciously. We're not even aware of it. So that's why we say counseling is good for everyone, because we don't know, why am I doing this, or why does this bother me so much? And we don't realize it might be rooted into our childhood of something that happened that may even not have been a big traumatic thing, but maybe something that you believed and it was repeated. So then life was pretty good until I was about 14 or 15, and I wasn't quite 15, and my mom was not well and actually ended up passing away when I was 15. And so that was like very big thing that happened in my life. And of course, being at that time the oldest daughter that was still at home, no one said I had to, but my mom, knowing she wasn't well, sort of was preparing me for if she did pass away, which was hard, but it was good. But then in some sense, as a young child, I took that on as, now I need to take her place. So and being that I was like growing up too, I always believed I had to do my best and not make any mistakes. So that put a lot of pressure on myself. And I think I was probably, from my older siblings, I was probably the most outgoing and interactive. And it might have been because the oldest four of us were like not even a year apart, some of us. So we were very close in age. And in order to get attention, I became like getting attention. So my dad like really relied on me, and I did walked through mom's whole death with him, like almost as an adult would. So like, I don't think he meant to put adult things on me, but he needed someone. And I just stepped into that role. And that kind of was how I, even into my adulthood and to some of my siblings dislike, I kind of played that role, like trying to fix everything, so, as that wears us out when we take that on. And of course, we were, at 13, I understood what it meant to have faith in God. And so that was part of my life. But for many years, I still thought it was up to me to make my life work. So that kind of wore me down. And so, so it was later in life that I found out the freedom that we can have and understanding who I was. Like, because sometimes you can lose your identity in a family where there's like, you're so close in age. But just knowing my identity and how I got my identity and who I was as a person was incredibly significant. And in our counseling, like, one of the things that we really like to look at is that all of us are born with legitimate needs. Like, we need to be loved, we need to be accepted, we need to be valued or have worth, and we need to be secure and have a sense of adequacy. And there aren't wrong needs, but just realizing how those needs only can be met.
Can you repeat those again? Sorry, can you repeat those again, those needs?
I like to tell people it's kind of like we used to just say laws, like the acronym laws: love, acceptance, worth, and security. But we really realized too that people search to feel adequate and enough. And so we've added adequacy. So you could say LAWSA.
There you go. Good. Thank you.
So, yeah. So it's like, so in life, it's not like when those are needs. So if they aren't met for us, or we don't understand how they're met, it's not, will we go seeking somewhere to find those? We will. It's a given. And because we become very needy, and especially if that hasn't been, well, even if it has been, but we feel it isn't enough. I always give an example of my grandson. He, our third grandson, he just loved his grandma. Like, he still loves his grandma, but he was crazy about her. So when I would pick him up, and I remember one Sunday morning, I was holding him and someone came to talk to me, and he just laid his body back and turned his head around, got right in my face, and just gave this big smile like, Grandma, it's all about me. Now, this is a grandson that he was our third grandson, but he was the first grandson on the other side of the first grandchild on the other side of the family. Loved like crazy. Parents loved him. So he had lots of love, but he still was needy, which shows our incredible need for these legitimate needs. And then just discovering. So we help people we walk alongside people to discover how those needs can be completely met, and then how we can come to our situations complete as a person.
Yeah, because everybody has these needs. So would you say, like, would it be too bold to say that probably just about everybody out there has some need that they're maybe meeting in maybe not a healthy way? Would that be
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I have yet to meet a person that hasn't. And, once you've worked with people and you see those things, you can listen to conversations and even see it,
Mm,
and it's not like, it's not a judgment on them. It's like, it's just a thing that we have not been helped to discover. And it's really important that we do. And just the freedom that comes in that, free to be who you really are, not trying to get something from someone or trying to be somebody that you were never really created to be. Like you just like to embrace how you've been created and run with it. Like, yeah. And
So,
feel confident.
yeah. So what about, okay, so like I've struggled with binge eating. Okay. And so, trying to eat food. And so we've talked about this a little bit, but what would you say, like, for somebody who's binge eating, or maybe it's not binge eating, maybe they're doing drugs or they're doing something. What would be the first thing that you would want to ask them to get them to help? Because there's people listening right now. They're like, I wonder if that's me. What's my need? What am I going to? So maybe they're binging. Maybe they're doing drugs. Maybe they're doing just something that's unhealthy, and they kind of know it. Maybe they're just like binge watching Netflix. Like they're just kind of escaping from life. What would be what would you say to them?
Well, first of all, it's really important to realize that any addiction of any kind or anything we go to is really, it came about, not that we decided it. It was a need that we were feeling wasn't met. And then we looked for something to compensate for that or to make us feel better in whatever area. Like it could be security, it could be it's always one of those basic needs or more than one. So it's helping them go back and discover when this began, if they can remember, like, when did they start doing this? What was happening in the dynamics of their family life? Maybe there was like it started as a child, or like what kind of stresses were in their life, and what were they feeling about. So helping them discover what led them to trying to find that as a means to meet a need, but they didn't realize they were trying to meet a need. They just gravitated to something to fill that vacuum that was in them and that they were feeling. So yeah, it's just helping them discover that and realize that and then realize how they can have that met in a legitimate way. Like, and replacing it with truth, not like, because you can stop, like when people are trying on their own hard, like this often happens. Like, say they were binge eating, so they try really hard, and then they start like, this would really relate, like, to you, could relate to this too, because you're in fitness and exercise, and that's why then we see people going to the absolute extreme in exercise, like to the point where they are like almost hurting themselves, but they go to that extreme. So if we don't find out what need is not being met and how it legitimately can be met and in a healthy way, we're going to do something else. We're going to gravitate to something else if we'll stop one thing and we'll pick up another. So.
And so I think what a lot of people are doing is they're stopping one thing that's maybe bad, and then they're trying to find something else that's not as bad.
That they think is, they think it's healthier, or they think it's wiser. But then if it's too extreme and it's not the legitimate thing that can ever meet their need, they're still going to be wanting and really hurting themselves in the meantime.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I shared this actually like on my Facebook, and I just kind of said like, so some of the things that I was doing was binge eating. And then I would also like just scroll Facebook, just kind of mindlessly scroll Facebook. You know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of tired, and none of these things are really bad. And then the other thing I would do is just go for really long walks, like just get away and just go for really
Mm-hmm.
long walks. You
Mm-hmm.
talk about extreme, like 30,000 steps we're talking about, right? Like going and just like walking and getting away. And then I'm like, okay, all of these things that I'm doing, they're not bad enough. Like the eating is bad if because it's maybe, but like, you know, eating some snacks, that's not really bad. Some people might say that's a healthy way. Scrolling Facebook, that might be a healthy way for a lot of people to just kind of
Mm-hmm.
de-stress. And going for walks, that's great. I actually often recommend people go out and go for a walk. But like you said, it's when you kind of go for an extreme, or when you're procrastinating on something, or when it's like you feel like you have to do it because if you don't do it, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
lose your mind. That's kind of, I think, when it gets unhealthy. So one of the things that you've really helped me to do, and I've like, because I have a relationship with God, I'm a Christian, right? And you work with
Mm-hmm.
Christians mainly. Um,
Mainly, yeah.
so for me, it was like understanding this. And I've always understood this, I guess, in my head. Like I know it, but not like actually doing it. And that is that nothing is going to satisfy me except for God, except for my relationship with Christ. So when I start putting that on the back burner, then just a whole host of things start to come up. I try to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fill that void in all these
Right.
different ways.
Because ultimately, as people of faith in God, as Christians, we realize, and we all know that how the fall happened. And see, before the fall, everybody's needs were met by God completely. Like they were completely loved, completely accepted, completely valued, and had worth. And He gave that to them. They were secure, and He was adequate for them, and they felt adequate in what He was asking of them. They were adequate because He made them adequate. And so that was lost when they chose to go their own way and go independent. So we've talked a lot together about independence, going our own way, trying to do things by working hard at it, or like giving it our best shot. And that works for a while, but it wears us out. So as people who have a faith and relationship with God, they have a great advantage, because when they come to understand that through this relationship with God, we have been brought back to a place of Him completely meeting our needs. That has been restored, and we have that source. But God is like a gracious God, and He's a gentleman, and He doesn't force us to do what He doesn't want us to have a relationship with us is one of control. He wants to control our lives out of love, like out of us submitting to His love, like He loves us to that place. So when we understand that and engage with Him in that way, then our needs are met by Him. And then it doesn't mean that we don't have feelings that will say my feeling was I didn't feel valued or significant, or for myself, I felt stupid. So if I keep trying to not feel stupid, I have to always be on the top of my game. Then I start doing things to prove that I'm not, even though deep underneath I'm still feeling like I am. But I have to never appear like I don't know anything, which is crazy, because we all don't. There's not a one of us that knows everything. But I had this, like, it's not consciously that I knew I had that on myself, but it's what would control me. Like if you think of that, in every situation, I had to be in the top of my game. So that's a lot of pressure, and you just break under that. And when I realized that, no, I can just enjoy who God made me to be and what He has given me in Himself. And He has said I have the wisdom of God as I depend on Him. Well, then it's like when these messages, because we get these messages that we think are coming from us, but they're coming from an outside voice. And it's like, you're stupid, or you could never do that. And I would just return it. Sometimes at the beginning, I would just say it out loud if nobody else was around. But I would say, no, I'm not stupid. I have the wisdom of God. And eventually that voice got so silent. And now I have to, it's not like it never comes, but I recognize it, and I know the truth against that voice. So it's like helping people replace the lie with the truth, So I think I've worked with some people that don't have a faith in God, and I can still to a degree, it still lies on them because they're not depending on a source outside of themselves. But still, it's helping them understand that they're believing this lie about themselves, and what would be the truth. Like what have they been gifted with, or what talents or gifts do they have that are unique to them and that they can grow in and be confident in. So, but I think for, as the people of faith, we have like great source, and it is like replacing the lie with truth. And actually psychology does that. We had a seminar, and we had a psychologist attend, and she said, do you know that psychology has just realized that the mind is made so that it can replace one thought with another thought? And it's like, yes, that's how we were created. But God really wants us to replace it with truth, his truth, because he has great value. We are his highest creation. He's great value in us. Like he sees us as greatly valuable.
Yeah, I think what you said just right there was really important. I think everybody needs to hear it. Basically, like, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to stop binge eating. I'm going to stop. It's like you have to replace it with something, right? So you have to, like, if you don't have something to replace it with, and all you're thinking about is, I can't do that, and you're thinking about it all day, that's
Absolutely.
all you're going to want to do, right? It's like,
and it's like putting yourself under law, and law entices you to do it. Like, just tell somebody. Recently, I just heard someone saying that they had overheard a husband saying to his wife in the presence of someone else, "Oh, there she goes again, eating a piece of cheesecake. Oh yeah, she just can't say no." And the person who does work like we do said, "Now, what good is that going to do to her? She probably will eat another piece of cheesecake, but she'll hide now."
mm-hmm,
Because now he's placed guilt on her and shame,
mm-hmm.
and she's going to try to do it herself, but she can't. So she's going to hide now. So it'll just become a greater burden and weight on her.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like to really walk in truth and to be free. It's just like, I felt like I went from like a worm crawling on the ground, trying to be a butterfly, to soaring like an eagle. Seriously, that's how I felt. And it was just so freeing. And even like, I feel so encouraged because I work with most people younger than myself, as you can tell. I'm getting up there, but I was so excited for them, because I feel like I was much older than most of them when I was like in my 50s when I like discovered this, or God revealed this to me, and I began to walk in it. And the freedom that is brought to my life, like I would say that I've lived longer not knowing this than I have knowing it. But it seems like I can't even hardly remember what it was like to be like in bondage like that, and feeling that weight and that pressure to perform and try, and it's just a freedom to just enjoy life. And do I blow it sometimes? Absolutely. But I know I don't have condemnation, and I can go back to the truth. I can stand up and go back to the truth. So that's like, it's just freeing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I had a friend that said similar thing to me. She said, Carla, when you feel condemned, like when you feel like really like a lot of shame, and you feel condemned, like, oh, you blew it again. How could you do that? You should have done this, and you should have done that, and you're such a failure. That's never from God. Like, because it says in the Bible, there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So when we feel that, that is not God. Yep. That is the enemy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's good too, because that was really helpful to me to realize that's not my voice saying that to myself in my head. That's an outside voice. So, and it can come through someone who says something like this husband, or it can be that we put this expectation on ourselves, and then when we hear that voice, we say, yes, that's how I feel about myself. And we end up, it becomes our voice because we accept it. And then it just is unrelentless. So, and then we try to make ourselves feel better by going to the things, like sometimes it's like food, or sometimes it's alcohol, or sometimes it's like lust or sex or whatever, just something to make me feel better, to make me feel like I have control of my life, and it does the exact opposite. That whatever you go to become something that'll control you. Where, when we run to God and we just embrace what he says about, because he's created us, he knows us. And so, but it's never because he wants to control us, to harm us. He wants us to submit to his leadership and his direction in our life, because it's how he designed us.
Mm-hmm.
So we function best how we were designed.
And there's a verse, can't remember which verse it is, maybe you would know, but it says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free."
Yeah, I believe that's in Galatians. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's for freedom that he's come to set us free.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He paid a great price to set us free.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
it's just, and I think another big thing of ours, I mean, and again, if you are not of faith, like, I just feel like people, when they come to me, I ask them if they would like me to share, like, how my faith has made a difference in my life. But you're not obligated. Like, we put no pressure even on people who have faith to believe what we say. Can I share this with you? You're free to say, I don't want that, or whatever. You're free to leave at any time. There's no, like, it's not like an indoctrination or pressure for people to accept what we're teaching. But it's just like to recognize and to see people set free. It's just the most amazing thing. Like, and he loved us so much that he gave his life for us, so he could give his life to us as believers when we receive him, so he could live his life through us. And that's the great theme about the Christian faith, that it probably is different than any other faith, is that we have a God that's alive, and he lives in us, and he wants to live through us as us. So using our unique personality, it's not like I die and I'm not even seeing. Like, it's like he beautifies what he has given us. Like, he brings beauty to how he's created us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even this morning,
it becomes effortless.
Yeah. Well, I know this morning, like, I was driving, and you kind of get these thoughts that, like, I think those lies, start to kind of seep in, like, oh, you're a failure, oh, this is not working, you're not really good, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I don't have to listen to that. I just kind of looked up at the trees as I was driving, of course, looking at the road too. And just like the words, joy and peace kind of came into my head. And I was just like communing with God. And I suddenly just like, from feeling really like kind of dark, just like smiling, right? And I was just like, I'm so happy.
Yes.
Like, I'm here. I'm talking to God. He's right here. We can commune.
Yeah.
And it was just, I really felt that real sense of freedom. Like, wow, like, I don't have condemnation. There's no chains. There's no bondage. I am free. It's me and God. There's nothing between us. I don't have to go to somebody and then they'll talk to God on my behalf. Like, it's just me and God here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We have that intimate personal relationship with him. And that's sort of what how we work with people. We walk with them to understanding and walking that way, because one of Jesus' names is Counselor. Mm-hmm. So he is our 24/7 counselor. Like, he's with us all the time. We have our own personal counselor. Yeah. But he says we can go to some who will you trust and can lead you in the right direction and point you to him. But we say we take people by the hand and we walk them to Jesus, if they're willing. And because he's their 24/7 counselor, like, we can't be there for people 24/7. That's not even God doesn't want us to be. He doesn't want us to take the place of him. He wants people to discover who he is and who they are, and how he and them can work together in such oneness and beauty.
Yeah, and that's what I felt like with you. Like, you weren't going on, like, I don't think of you as like the typical therapist. I mean, like, you weren't always just like, well, tell me about this, tell me about that, what about your childhood, what about this? Like, we did talk about my childhood, we talked about all that, but I really felt like you were you just kept pointing me to Christ, and I'm like, man, like, this is pretty amazing, because I'm a Christian, and that is if there's something broken, if there's a problem, it's my relationship with God. Because when my relationship with God is good, everything else gets taken care of. Not that everything's happy and fun and whatever, but it gets taken care of.
No. Yeah. Because life will come at us, and the storms will come at us. Like, we're not exempt from trials, and he even tells us that, because we're living in a broken world that affects us. But it's like how I process. It's kind of like we have a little handout we sometimes give people. It's kind of, do we look at our circumstances and then try to determine who God is? Like, I look at what's happening in my life and I try to figure out who God is. Or do I look to God and through his eyes look at my circumstances? So I'm going to walk through these valleys and these trials at some time in my life. We all have them. But do I walk alone through that valley, clawing my way, trying to figure it out in frustration and anger or fear or dread or whatever? Or do I know that I'm not alone and there's someone that has walked this valley and will walk it through me and with me, and he is totally experiencing what I'm experiencing, and I can rest in that, and I can to know that there's something beyond this valley, and I have a hope, right?
Mm.
So that's what I find. I think when like people come sometimes very like they come at different points in their life. Um, uh, it was I went to a chiropractor one time, and he said to me, he was asking me about what we do, and he said, do people come like when they're having marriage troubles or something? He said, do they come like and say, I want to prevent problems? Like, can you help us? We want to prevent problems. Or do they come when things are a wreck? And I said, well, I wish I could say they come before they, and we have had one couple that were quite newly married and they came for that reason. But I think even then we don't learn as well, because sometimes we have to experience struggles before we know how to make the application, because we can teach this is what would be good when you come to this struggle. But if I've never experienced it, I might even forget about it when I get to that point. But if I'm in the thick of it and I make the application and I see that it works, that's when I'm going to be convinced this does make a difference in my life. So he said that to me, and then jokingly he said to me, well, that's the same with my job. So basically he was telling, don't wait till you're a wreck to come to me.
Yeah, come early.
So I laughed. I thought, oh, he set me up for that one.
Totally.
But it is true. Like, so when I was meeting some people come like they're so broken. And my desire and my hope and prayer is that even in the very beginning, because sometimes we have to look at what has happened, what has brought the person to this place. And sometimes history taken, because I don't know people's history. I don't know what could have, like, I want to see what things happened in their life that led them to where they are. I need to see that. I need to help them see that, even more importantly, that they can see that. And sometimes they do, even while I'm taking, they say, oh my goodness, that's repeated over and over. And they never saw that before. So that's good. But it's a tough thing to talk through, like our hard issues, and to look at them and to like, I have to say, well, I have to face this and do like meet this challenge. And yet we can't get to victory unless we walk through what's keeping us from victory, not to suffer through it, but to have hope, that there is hope to, and that's my desire, to give people hope, as like to have them give some hope when they come, because some people feel so hopeless when they come that they can't even bear to look at pain. And I just say, like, we go through these things of pain. But what I love about what we do is every new truth that you learn and apply to your life, and it actually, you see it work, see God at work in you, and that this is the way to live and walk. Well, then it gives you such hope that, okay, I know there's still lots more, but I tell them, enjoy that. That's a huge victory. Like, even understanding your true identity is such a huge thing. And there's more to come. We need to understand, we need to have a right concept of God. We need, like, how did my concept of God get twisted? Like, and I see him like somebody up there just watching for me to make a mistake and pounce on me. Like, that's not a true concept of God. How did I get that? And what is the truth about God? So, and then I walk in that, even if my feelings don't necessarily line up to it. But no, listen to your feelings. Don't disregard them, suppress them, but let them be the ones that lead you to the truth, not to take you away to try to find something to ease the pain or bury the pain or whatever, because it'll keep surfacing until we look at it.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting because I've often thought that I should have a counselor. I've often thought, it'd be really good. A lot of people say it's just really good to have, a therapist or somebody that you can go to. But it was kind of like you said, you kind of have to wait till you feel like you have to sometimes. And I feel like a lot of us shouldn't do that. Like, because we probably all have things that we could prevent. But again, sometimes you have to walk through something in order to really learn it. Like I was kind of similar to you. I'm the fourth of 6 kids, so kind of in the middle. Um, and I could see my siblings, like my older siblings doing stuff, and I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to do that. Oh, I'm not going to do that. Like sometimes you can learn by watching, but sometimes it seems like you kind of have to just go through it.
And sometimes the very thing you say, I'm not going to do that, you do it.
Yeah.
And then you learn from your own mistakes
You knew
the
you
hard
were.
way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a book that I just love. It's a lady who's in counseling in the U.S. doing the same thing as we are doing. And she just recently has written a book called Valley Life. Her name is Yolanda Stith. I'd really highly recommend the book. And she talks about walking through her valleys. And she says, we learn life's lessons not on the mountaintops, in the valley. And we all will have valleys. And but just how she was taught through those valleys, like how God restored her through those valleys and built her to, like, she could see that every valley preceding the next valley, she thought, oh, this is the worst thing I could ever go through. But then when she went through the next valley, she realized what she had learned from the valley before helped her in that darkest valley, which was when her husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor and passed away. So yeah, it's like, and it's just experiencing, yes, not, and what I like about the book, she doesn't make it sound like, oh, I just sailed through this pain. No, but there was a different, she had a different view of God than she did when her first valley, when they weren't able to have children, and then they finally conceived and had this child and it died. And so, like, that was like, God, what are you doing? Like she said, I could see, I didn't really understand that God was good, but we live in a world where these things happen, and it's part of the fall, and we will come against these things, and it's not God causing them, but he wants to work with us and comfort us. He's the God of all comfort. He wants us to know him in ways that we can walk through these hard things victorious, even if we're walking in pain. That's the key. I think two of the most important questions everyone needs to know is, who am I? And how do I live and walk in victory? We all want that. We're created for that. And so we're not satisfied unless we have answers to those questions. If we're of faith or not of faith, we are searching for that.
Yeah, and a lot of people do say that even though there was trials in their life, there was really serious struggles, they actually are thankful for the struggles because they see how they got to the other side. And I think of James 1 where it says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so you can be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And isn't that what we want? We don't want to lack anything. We don't want to be, kind of always wanting something or never getting what we want. We want to have what we need. We want our needs met. And I just feel like,
and just like
go ahead.
Sorry. It's just saying, just like when I was talking about those basic needs, actually that's what's happening, is he's showing us through those trials that our basic needs are being met by him and can only be met by him. And that's where we mature and grow, because we all of a sudden find the source of life itself, God himself.
Yeah, it's like awesome. You kind of get, like people say, oh, I got to the end of myself, or I was at the bottom of the pit, and all those things. And that's kind of where you have to be sometimes, unfortunately, to really be like, wait a sec, I do not have the resources to help myself right now. Where can I go? And that's often when people find God, because there's nowhere else to go,
Right. But in Peter, he says, he's given us all that we need as believers. He has given us all that we need for life and godliness. But notice, he has given us. He's the source. So we soon run empty when we are the source of everything, which is sad, because so many people feel it is up to them. And maybe they've even been raised to believe that you can do it, like even the saying, sounds so good, you can do anything you want to do. Well, what happens when I can't do something? If that's what if that's the mindset I have, if that's what I believe, then there's something wrong with me if I can't do anything. I want to do this and I can't do it. So what's wrong with me? So then I become like, you see how that creates a cycle? Whereas when I know that God has a plan for me and he has equipped me for that plan, but he's the source and of that ability to be able to walk in that plan and be and experience the abundant life. The abundant life isn't when we die and we go to heaven. That will be great. But the abundant life is living with Jesus here on earth in relationship and having him giving directive to our lives and seeking him for the source of strength, wisdom, and direction. So that we don't become our own source, because we run empty soon.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about, like, I want to help people with their fitness and their nutrition, and that's all very important to me. And I can, legitimately help people a lot, but I also feel like it's that relationship with God that's ultimately going to satisfy and going to fulfill a person's needs. I still do think, though, that there are some people like, oh, I have God and I don't need to worry about my eating, and that's like a whole other side of the spectrum. Because I think if you are a Christian, you should be looking after your body and you should be eating well and fueling yourself and all that.
Because we are a 3-part person. We're like, and all is important. Our body is the temple where God lives in as believers. And yes, we should take care of the temple, because like I tell people sometimes, well, you could just disregard that. And they said, well, our days are numbered. We're going to live that. And I said, yeah, but how will you live it? Like, will you live it? Like, I mean, our bodies will break down because of age and that stuff, no matter what we do. But to a great extent, am I doing all I can to, like, again, in balance, because God's a God of balance. It's not extremes in anything. But am I taking care of my body so that I can run this race, and even for us, that we can continue to do what we're doing and be healthy enough to do it? Because there's some people at our age there, and sometimes it's not always because they haven't taken care of themselves. Like, we can get diseases and things that we have taken care of our body, and we still get. But if we just neglect those things, and some of those things come as neglect, it can hinder what we are able to, how we're able to function even in our faith journey.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is so good. I could keep talking to you, Leona, but I kind of want to wrap it up. But there might be people listening right now. They're like, okay, that sounds really good, everything you're talking about, but I don't know God. How do I get to God? Like, is this even something I should pursue? What would you say to somebody who's like, okay, I don't really know what you're talking about, this freedom in Christ and this whole relationship with God? What would you say to them? Like, where should they start? What would be a good thing for them to do?
I would say that it would be really important if you have someone in your life that you have watched their life and you have confidence in how they are walking, and you know that they have a faith in God. And you try, and they're not the kind of person that's gonna, Bible thump you and pound things into your head and force you, like, try to convince you of something. I'd love to share with you, what God has given us. I think of our daughter when she was 13 years old. She had a close neighbor friend, and she would invite her to different things, like daily vacation Bible school or Sunday school or something. And her family was not of any belief, and they didn't allow her to. But she would come over, and our daughter would play, just a fun play. She'd take her Sunday school lessons out and play with her and everything. And then when they were about 13 years old, this friend came over. They were up in our daughter's room, and she said, and I haven't been privy to all their conversations as children and what our daughter was telling her about God, but she never would make her. She'd invite her, and parents would say no or whatever. And all of a sudden, our daughter said, out of the clear blue, she said, Julene, am I going to go to hell? And I just think this was certainly from God himself that put this thought into her mind. But she looked at her and she said, I can't tell you that. I can't say that you'll go to hell. But I can tell you how you can know you can have eternal life and live with God forever, even beginning here. I can tell you that. So it's just to simply say, I can explain to you God's plan for all of us. And it's the same plan for all of us. He doesn't have a different way for anyone, but it's the best way. And I can share that with you if you'd like to. And it's up to you to decide and think about it. And it's not like you have to make a decision. It's not like we ever have to talk about this again if you don't wish to. So I have had people come that have no faith in God, and just have come because someone recommended and said, I think this is a person you can really talk to, and they would listen to you. And that's kind of how I started with them. I'd like to just share this with you if you're okay with it. And this, I still remember this one young lady. She just started crying at one point, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Are you okay?" As I was just sharing, we have these diagrams that kind of show like how, like what happened before when creation, what happened all the way through. And she started to cry, and she said, "Well," because I was telling her we're all lost, because the Bible tells us we're all lost like sheep. We're lost, and we need a shepherd. And she started to cry at that point. And she said, "Well, on the way here, I just thought, I don't know what to tell this lady. I don't even know her, and I don't even know how to tell her where I'm at. All I feel is like I'm lost. I'm like a lost sheep." I don't know that I've ever said that particular thing to anyone before in a counseling session, but I said that to her. And so then I explained to her how we could know God and whatever, but I was very cautious not to put pressure on her to make a decision. So I said, "Well, think about it, and we'll make another appointment. We could talk about it after you've thought about it." So she came back, and I said, "How are you feeling about what we talked about last time?" And she said, "Well, I want to have him in my life, but I've never prayed in my life, so I don't know how to do it."
Mm.
And so it was just a great. So that was her. And then I had another lady come because of marriage issues that she was having. She just came alone, but she said, I'm not interested in that. And even in that, I was able to tell her about the different kinds of love. Like there's romantic love, filial love, and then there's God's love, like, which is unconditional. And like, there's all these different types of life. And I think what you're stuck in is like, you have this like romantic love that you're looking for, and you're looking outside of your husband for it. But it's like, it's just this kind of love, and it'll never give you what you're really looking for. And actually, you have a husband who would love you no matter what size or how you looked. Because that was from her words. He said he totally loved her. So, and she went away and she said, "Thanks, you saved my marriage." So she wasn't a believer. So it's like, I think, like, God loves everyone. He loves even those who don't believe in him and choose not to. He still loves them, and we can love them as he loved them. And then they make the choice. So I would say, go to someone that could explain it to you, and you have the freedom to make the decision. There's no pressure at all. So
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Leona. Yeah, well, any closing words that you would have to say, and then where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Okay. So closing words, I would say, don't continue to struggle and feel like and be hopeless. Like, no matter what your situation, there is nothing that is so far gone that there isn't help for and hope for. So like, reach out and for help, because there is help. And even if like you don't have a faith in God, there are people that can give you direction and hope. So I would say, and for Christians who are struggling, you're struggling because you don't fully understand what you have, and we would be happy to walk with you and help you discover how you can have that victory. So how you can, we have a website. It's www.lifediscipleship.com. And or you can contact us by email, lifediscipleship@shaw.ca, or you can call us at 403-488-4836. And we'd be happy to talk with you. And even there's no obligation if you connect with us to continue. You can ask us more questions about exactly how we do things. And and we do, you don't have to be in our area. We actually live in Medicine Hat, Alberta, but we actually right now, all my counselees are distance, and I do it through Zoom. And we also do teaching too, and have classes and stuff like that. So so most of my stuff is online. Of course, it had to go online and I did some counseling before online, but it's really grown over the pandemic. I think people became more open to, hey, I guess I can, because people would say, I don't want to do online. Can I find somebody local? And now people are just more comfortable with doing it online. So so right now I have only one local counseling that I'm doing in our office, and the rest is all online. So don't let that be a hindrance to it. And we're I think our costs are competitive because we don't actually charge. we're a charity, so it's on a donation basis with a suggested donation of $60 for an hour and a half. But there's no pressure. We help people that can't pay, and we never refuse to help people. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Leona. Your ministry has impacted me greatly, and I actually got referred to you by other friends of ours. So it's amazing. Like, yeah, you really are making an impact, and I just really appreciate you, Leona, sharing this. And I know that it will impact the people who are listening today.
Yes, it's wonderful, because we always feel like God brings those who He knows need to hear this and are ready to hear the message that is just burning on our hearts, because we would love to have people free and walk in who they really were created to be. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you so much, Carla. It's been a joy to get to know you and to work with you, and also to be on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Leona. This episode is brought to you by my company, Power Fitness Online. We are a tight-knit fitness community, and we guide you every step of the way to get fit and stay fit through our live workouts, nutrition coaching, and incredible support team. Go to powerfitnessedson.com to learn more. Thank you for tuning into the podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please leave a positive review on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, or wherever you're listening. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I would love to see your comments. I would love to know what you think about this episode and interact with you. I love hearing from you. Once again, I'm Carla Rand, and this is The Carla Rand Show, and I can't wait to see you next week for our next episode.